All right, let's jump right into a question that sounds super simple but has no joke, puzzled people for thousands of years. What exactly is art?
So take a look at this. On one side, we've got this incredible painting from like 30,000 years ago, the very beginning of human creativity. And on the other, a banana, taped to a wall, a banana that's sold for over 100 grand. And somehow, our culture calls both of them art. So what gives? How is that even possible?
And that right there, that's the puzzle we're diving into. This idea of making art is something humans have always done, right? It's universal. But try to pin down what it actually is? Good luck. It feels totally impossible.
Seriously, what's the link here? How can these two wildly different things both get the same label? Look, if you've ever walked into a modern art museum, looked at something and thought, am I missing something? You are not alone. Not at all. You're actually tapping into a debate that's been going on for centuries.
Okay, so let's look at how people have tried to crack this case. For a long time, the strategy was basically to find one simple rule. A clear-cut definition that lets you sort things into two piles, art and not art.
And the first, most obvious theory is this. Art has to represent something. It has to be an imitation of the real world. This idea is ancient. We're talking Plato and Aristotle ancient. The thinking goes, a piece of art has to be a picture of something, right? A person, a landscape, a bowl of fruit. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, but then, boom. What do you do with abstract art? You look at a Jackson Pollock drip painting, and it's not a picture of anything in the real world. It's about color and energy and feeling. So that rule, it just shatters. Theory number one is out.
Okay. Theory one is a bust. So what's next? Let's try this one. Art has to be beautiful. Simple, right? The whole point of art is to create something that's, nice to look at, something aesthetically pleasing.
But that doesn't hold up either, does it? Think about some of the most powerful art ever made. Goya's paintings about the horrors of war, for instance, or so much protest art. This stuff is meant to be disturbing, to shock you, to make you really uncomfortable. It's definitely great art, but beautiful? That's probably the last word you'd use.
All right, let's give it one more shot. What about skill? Technical skill. I mean, you look at a statue by Michelangelo, and you're just blown away by the craftsmanship, the raw talent. So maybe that's it. Art is just a display of incredible, mind-blowing skill.
And then along comes Marcel Duchamp in 1917. What does he do? He goes out, buys a totally ordinary urinal, signs a fake name on it, and sticks it in an art gallery. And this changed everything. It was called found object art, and it took basically zero traditional skill to make. And just like that, rule number 3, gone.
So this is where things get really interesting. We're heading into the 20th century, and this is the moment in our investigation where everything just explodes. It felt like artists weren't just making art anymore, they were declaring all-out war on the very idea of a definition.
Yeah, the big change was that artists stopped just, evolving their styles. Instead, they started deliberately pushing the boundaries. It was like they were saying, oh, you think art needs to be beautiful? Watch this. Or you think it needs skill? How about this? They were systematically taking apart every single rule we just talked about.
And it happened so fast. I mean, look at this. Early 1900s, Cubism just smashes the idea of a single perspective. A decade later, you've got Dadaism, which just throws logic out the window completely. By the 50s, abstract expressionism says, forget about painting things, let's just paint feelings. And then by the 60s, conceptual art comes along and says, you know what, you don't even need an object. The idea alone can be the art. Mind-blowing. So after all that rule-breaking, it kind of feels like we're at a dead end, right? We've got nothing. But here's a thought. What if the problem isn't the answers? What if we've been asking the wrong question this whole time? And that's where a little bit of philosophy comes in and gives us a brand new clue.
This clue comes from a philosopher named Ludwig Wittgenstein. And his big idea was that some words, they just don't have a neat little checklist of features that defines them. So what if arc is one of those words? What if we've been trying to find a simple, clean dictionary definition for something that just doesn't have one?
This is what's called an open concept. Now, don't think of it like a box with hard edges. Think of it more like a web, or maybe a family. The boundaries are fuzzy and they're always changing. Things are connected by all these overlapping similarities, not one single rule. And every time a new piece of art comes along and we as a culture decide, yep, that counts, the whole web, the whole family,
shifts and grows a little.
So, what does that actually mean? It means there isn't one single thing that the cave painting and the banana have in common that magically makes them art. Nope, they're just part of this huge, sprawling, interconnected family. And here's the really important part. That means we are always constantly debating and arguing about who gets to be in the family. The definition is never, ever finished.
Which leads us to the big finish. Okay, so if there's no single answer, why bother? Why have people been arguing about this for thousands of years? Why do we care so much?
Because the fact that we can't nail it down, that isn't a failure. It's not a bug, it's a feature. That's the whole point. The constant debate, the arguments, the feeling of wait, is that art? All the new stuff that challenges what we thought we knew, that is the living, breathing process of art. It's proof that our culture is alive and thinking and questioning.
All right, so let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways here? First, trying to find one single, timeless definition for art is a lost cause. Second, it's way more helpful to think of art as an open concept, something we're all defining and redefining together all the time. And finally, and maybe most importantly, that constant conversation is what keeps art so essential and alive.
And that leaves us with a much cooler question to ask. Instead of looking backwards trying to find some dusty old definition in a book, we should be looking forward. The real question isn't what is art, it's what are we going to decide art is next? And the coolest part is, that's a question that all of us get to help answer.